Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is about to address and welcome the delegates.
Monotheism and equity, who raised the call of human dignity, and who liberated mankind from serving anyone or anything but you. I send greetings to the Immaculate Household, sincere companions and followers of the Holy Prophet, all worthy servants of Allah, and all human beings with pure nature. I also wish to express my heartfelt fraternal welcome to you all, dear guests, heads of state and officials of Islamic countries, as well as heads and members of all delegations, the United Nations Secretary General, the Secretary General of this summit, and other esteemed guests. Brothers and sisters, you have now gathered together in one of the homelands and strongholds of Islam. Even though officially our president is your host, each and every Iranian also considers himself as your host and treasures your presence in this land of faith. Dear guests, our gathering is not that of some friends got together in pursuit of certain interests, whose bonds shall be broken once new interests appear on the horizon. We are brothers who have been eternally linked by faith in the Quran, thus becoming a united body, that is the Islamic Ummah, irrespective of any historical, geographical, or political diversity. We have accepted this link through our submission to Islam. That is inevitable. And though complaints, differences, and even tensions could cast a pall on this fact, but they can always be washed away by recourse to wisdom, reason, and forbearance. Let us, in such a spirit, glance at this august gathering and this historical meeting, to be able to reap benefit from it for determining the destiny of our own nations and that of the great Islamic Ummah. Brothers and sisters and dear guests, at the opening of this meeting I will present my inaugural with regard to three issues, namely Islam, the Islamic Ummah, and the OIC meeting and its prospects. During the early days after its advent, Islam was, and it still is, a pathway toward a new world, warranting a prosperous life, moral soundness, and salvation for mankind. At the time of the advent of Islam, previously and even today, the major sufferings and grievances of man, which Islam is bent on eradicating, have permanently been the same: poverty, ignorance, discrimination, war, insecurity, and finally man's incarceration in the prison of materialism and captivity by his evil desires. And Islam is the religion of humanity, moderation, wisdom, and submission to the Almighty. And evidently, all religions have been so before being subjected to distortion. As such, Islam presented non-extravagant remedies to human pains and sufferings in logically and rationally acceptable ways. Islam invited mankind to remembrance of God, supplication, and establishment of a spiritual relationship with the Almighty. Islam taught man and recommended to him to combat evil, aggression, corruption, and to constantly fight against egotism, selfishness, and carnal desires. Islam's major injunctions took shape in this way, and Islam's program for man's individual, social, moral, and political life grew out of such roots. In Islam, social justice, different types of freedom, equitable peace, combating oppression and aggression, male and female relations among people and among societies, as well as self-edification, inherent relationship with the Almighty, are all based on those pillars and geared toward alleviating the perennial pains gripping humanity. Today, too, despite its superficial color and glitter, human life suffers from the same pains that have beset humanity in the course of history. The majority of people of the world are poor, while a small number hold the major part of the assets and the wealth upon the earth. Most nations are deprived of scientific progress, while certain groups have used their science and knowledge as a means to mete out oppression on others. Wars flare in nooks and corners of the world, while others live in constant fear of wars breaking out. All over the world, there is discrimination among countries and class differences within most states. The Western materialistic civilization is directing everyone toward materiality, while money, gluttony, and carnal desires are made the greatest aspirations. Finally, sincerity, truthfulness, altruism, and self-sacrifice have been replaced in many parts of the world by deception, conspiracy, avarice, jealousy, and other despicable motives. Science, technology, new equipment and facilities, and faster speeds have dramatically changed the world as compared with the past. But the chronic, age-old pains of humanity still remain unchanged. The major problems of today are the same as they were in the past. Western liberalism, communism, socialism, and all other isms have gone through their tests and proved their debility and incompetence. As in the past, today, Islam is the only angel of remedy and salvation. Today, as in 1400 years ago, the call still echoes. Unto you there has come from Allah light and a lucid book indeed, with which Allah shall lead the ones who seek his pleasure to the paths of peace, and by his will he'll bring them out of utter darkness into light and guide them to the right sirat. The important consideration is the observation and recognition of the true visage of Islam, devoid of any embellishments. The illuminated visage of Islam has been defaced and defiled in the course of several centuries by foes, and in the course of longer spans of time by the ignorant and heedless friends. Today, they have deliberately or ignorantly made additions or deletions in Islam. At present, too, incorrect understanding and quest for interest are still at work by certain inner circles to tarnish the image of Islam. But without a shade of doubt, enemy publicity in this regard is by far more effective through trying to embark upon this move by subtle and sly ways. One instance of the enemy's incessant efforts to this end is the massive publicity campaign against Islamic Iran after the establishment of the Islamic government in this land. They felt that leveling accusations and furnishing false news would be the most effective way to stave off the impacts of this great revolution. They have spoken such falsities about us and ascribed such things to us that their own words have become repetitious and absolutely boring to the listeners. The Zionists, the notorious Zionist-led media, agents of global arrogance, and the Americans, more than others, that is, those who have sustained the greatest losses due to the revolution, have been, and still are, the most vociferous in this area. Muslim brothers and sisters, on this basis, our great task is to recognize Islam, to make it recognized, and become more and more familiar with one another. The Islamic Ummah. The Islamic Ummah, which sprang up in Madinatul Nabi and which soon grew quantitatively and qualitatively in an astonishing and legendary way, was the first political human produce of Islam. In less than half a century after the emergence of this auspicious phenomenon, it trod upon almost half the entire territories of the three large neighboring ancient civilizations of Persia, Rome, and Egypt. A century later, it developed a brilliant civilization and a grand and powerful government in the heart of the world, bound on the east by the Great Wall of China and the Atlantic Ocean coasts, and on the north by the Siberian steppes, and on the south by the southernmost part of the Indian Ocean. The 3rd and 4th centuries after Hijrah saw such a brilliant civilization, of which the academic and cultural achievements can still be seen in the modern world after 1,000 years. When recounting the history of science and civilization, Western historians overlook this grand and unprecedented awakening, transformation, and revolution in science, culture, and civilization, and link the history of science from ancient Greece and Rome to the Renaissance, as though science and civilization had died for 1,000 years and were of a sudden renaissance during the Renaissance. But the truth of the matter is that the Middle Ages was a period of darkness, ignorance, and consternation only for the Western Europe. But for the Islamic world, which was several times larger than Europe, ranging from Andalusia to China, this was a period of illumination, awakening, and academic sublimation. This reminder does not aim at boasting of the past or lamenting the decline of days gone by. The aim is to underline the fact that Islam and its life-inspiring knowledge, which gave rise to such a paramount civilization, are now at our disposal, and warn us, O you believers, answer the call of God and his apostle when he invites you unto that which gives you life eternal. Islam has proven that it has the capacity to lead its ummah towards civil and academic sublimation and political power. Faith, struggle, avoidance of discord, are the only prerequisites for the fulfillment of this grand design. The Holy Quran teaches us, "Be not infirm and do not grieve, and you shall have the upper hand if you believe." The Quran also teaches us, "And those who are fighting for our cause will surely guide them to our ways. Indeed, God is with those who do good deeds." It also offers this instruction: "Obey Allah and His Apostle, and do not err between you quarrel, for then you shall be weak in heart, bereft of any mettle. Therefore have patience, be persistent. Surely God's with the patient." Weakness in relation to these three factors has at present engulfed the Islamic Ummah in a pitiable condition. Over the past 2 centuries, the persistent and cunning enemies employing prudence and policy, and some incompetent Muslim governments, together with certain diverse historical and political factors and conditions, have greatly contributed to this condition which we today inherit from the past generations. Brothers and sisters, let us bequeath to the posterity something more glorious. In studying the external factors conducive to the present condition, I find the invasion of the arrogant front to be the most effective factor. In our culture, arrogance refers to a power clique which relies on political, military, scientific, and economic power, and is inspired by a discriminatory world outlook toward mankind that exerts pressure on and exploits large groups of human beings, that is, other nations, governments, and countries, through bullying tactics and contemptuous domination, in order to interfere in their internal affairs, to plunder their assets and wealth, to threaten governments, to oppress the nations, and to insult their culture and traditions. Salient examples are colonialism, neo-colonialism, and recently an extensive and all-out political, economic publicity campaign, and even a military invasion by yesterday's colonizers and their heirs. All of these are carried out in front of the eyes of our nations, which are tasting their bitter fruits. In this effective invasion, the Western powers have benefited from their academic and technological advancement and some of their national and indigenous features. We cannot reprimand the enemy, but those who pave the ground for the victory of their enemies and their own defeat through short-sightedness, lasting after ease and comfort and egotism, deserve to be rebuked. The West, in its all-rounded invasion, has also targeted our Islamic faith and character. In the light of its store of science, needed by all, the West intensely and persistently exported to our countries the culture of laxness and disregard for religion and ethics, a culture with which it is itself entangled. Indubitably, this ethical quagmire will not in a distant future engulf the present Western civilization and wipe it out. At the present juncture, the world of Islam is in a calamitous condition due to hostile invasions, coupled with the inner factors affecting the past generations. Poverty, ignorance, academic backwardness, moral laxness, and worse, cultural and at times political domination by its enemies on the one hand, and great problems such as those of Palestine, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Iraq, Kashmir, Bosnia-Herzegovina, the Caucasia, and others on the other hand, offer a long list of divine and human responsibilities to the governments, political dignitaries, and leaders of the Islamic world. Today, we should take the initiative. So far, the enemy has always held the initiative. And we have, at the best, only made some complaints. In a historical process comprised of dozens of initiatives by the enemy, Palestine has been turned into the personal belonging of the Zionists. First, some Palestinian lands were purchased, then the immigrant Zionists were armed. Afterwards, civil war raged, and Palestine's dismemberment was declared. The new parts of that Islamic Arab country were conquered and occupied. And ultimately it was usurped entirely, while parts of Egypt, Syria and Jordan were also annexed to it. Up to this point, the Arab neighbors of Palestine have only once held the initiative, and that was the October 1973 attack by Syria and Egypt during the holy month of Ramadan. This attack did not reach full results due to the cooperation of the United States with Israel and the inaction of the Islamic countries. Nonetheless, it was a source of honor for the Arab front and led to the liberation of a part of the Arab lands. From then on, the Zionists and their supporters, headed by the United States, have all along held the initiative in chanting slogans of compromise and generally to consolidate the usurped occupation of Palestine. And they have driven their rivals to all possible extremes. We Muslim governments should have offered more serious assistance to the frontline states to rescue Palestine. In the past, some of our governments' behavior have been disadvantageous to the frontline states. A prominent example was the government of Iran in the Pahlavi era. Pitifully, at that time, Iran was a safe haven for the Zionists and a faithful colleague for the usurping Israeli regime. Dear brothers and sisters, this condition is incompatible with Islamic dignity and far away from the remedies to the pains grieving the Islamic Ummah. All Islamic countries should assume a meritorious role in retrieving the rights of the Palestinian people, and the world of Islam should also proceed from passivity to a state of holding the initiative. Both these duties are at present carried out wholeheartedly, with might and main, only by the faithful and dignified youth in Palestine and Lebanon. Hail to them! Brothers and sisters, our opposition to the so-called Middle East peace process is because it is unjust, arrogant, contemptuous, and
I'm Mark Bruzonsky, your host for this weekly program, Mideast Realities, and thank you for watching. If you too are concerned about the situation in today's Middle East and about U.S. policies toward that crucial region of the world, and if you'd like to meet like-minded persons, why don't you come to one of our weekly social meetings? I'll be there, of course. Just give us a call for details.